Despite every indication that he was doing everything the right way, he still found himself a victim of egregious government overreach. Our office will continue to monitor this situation closely and ensure that he and his loved ones get the support that they need.
Mayor Mamdani releasing a statement saying he's outraged.
A few moments later,
ICE did get back to our request for information and said that it made the arrest because he had no legal right to be in the United States. And it added that he has a prior arrest for assault and entered the United States on a tourist visa back in 2017.
So breaking news here, apparently Zohran Mamdani is now fuming after ICE just arrested one of his own New York City government employees for being an illegal alien from Venezuela with a past record of criminal arrests. That is right, you cannot make this up. And of course, leftists are beginning by defending the indefensible. After all, how and why on earth would you ever hire an illegal alien to work for City Hall to begin with? And especially keeping in mind, apparently this guy was working as a data analyst when he's coming from Venezuela. So in other words, this is an illegal from a country that we know is hostile to the United States. There are various sanctions that have been in place for decades. And sure, we don't know truly whether he was pro or anti-Maduro, but it doesn't necessarily matter. Imagine bringing over an illegal from, say, Russia, China, North Korea, or Iran and saying, well, you know, you claim you love America. Hey, you want to handle government databases and IT? You want to have access to everyone's personal and private information? Seems to me not just like an egregious moment where why are you even hiring an illegal, but that actually appears, I don't know, call me crazy, to be a genuine problem of national security. But of course, as I said, not only is Mamdani going out and defending this guy and defending New York for hiring him, they are further, of course, as usual, because they cannot tell anything truthful about the ICE operations ever, lying about the situation. Mamdani's further doubling down, claiming that this guy had legal status when he did not. They were now trying to argue, oh, he didn't break any laws, even though he broke several different laws. And so we'll also debunk that hoax. But again, this is the story. New York City hired a freaking illegal alien from Venezuela, and once ICE caught him, instead of admitting, oh shoot, we screwed up, they're doubling down, they're defending their decision. But of course, what else is really new there? Because this is obvious, right? The left-wingers can say all they want about how we're fine with a reasonable immigration policy. We just don't agree with some of the social media videos of what ICE is doing. But no. When you really break it down, they don't think a single person should ever be deported, even those with criminal histories. When ICE goes to arrest them, what do? A bunch of left-wing protesters show up and quite literally try to free them and help them escape. We just saw that today in Minnesota, and arguably, here you're seeing that once again. No, they claim they're okay with deporting the worst of the worst, but when you go out in the streets and actively defend the worst of the worst and impede ICE operations who are trying to literally deport child predators in many cases and other likewise, domestic assault, all these issues, not very nice people, then of course that is what the left really believes. But that's already well known and established, isn't it? Anyways, guys, let's get into this now. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That's not only the best way to support our work, but it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of our latest videos. And that said, take a listen right here to the introductory details if you are still struggling to believe there's no way that really happened. Yes, it did. This is exactly who New York City was hiring as wonderful employees. So the Department of Homeland Security detained a New York City Council employee during an immigration appointment on Monday, leading to outrage from Mayor Zohran Mamdani. Now, take a listen to these details, especially because you're going to hear a bunch of arguments that this guy is a legal immigrant when he's just not. That's completely made up. Okay, DHS says the 53-year-old Rafael Andres Rubio Barroquez overstayed on a 2017 tourist visa. So in other words, he came here on a 90-day pass to do tourism, and he straight up just defrauded the U.S. government. He used it as the excuse to get into the country, immediately fled, hid somewhere. By the way, I'd like to point out that pre-Joe Biden just opening the border to everyone, this was one of the most common ways to do illegal immigration in America. And after all, if you overstay a visa, you need to go home, right? But it doesn't stop there. They also say he was arrested in an assault case before, and Mamdani and other city leaders demanded the man's release on Monday, saying, quote, "I'm outraged to hear that a New York City Council employee was detained in Nassau County by federal immigration officials at a routine immigration appointment." Mamdani wrote in a statement, "This is an assault on our democracy, our city, and our values. I am calling for his immediate release and will continue to monitor the situation." Now, I already want you to notice some of the far left ideology coming out here, because notice how it doesn't matter. He's not asking for the details here. He's not saying full investigation or due process. No, he's basically saying, I don't care that he's an illegal. I don't even care if he's been involved before in an assault case. He must entirely be released because, after all, Mamdani's logic is, what does he really believe, like, deep down, right? Every single illegal alien should be allowed to stay. Not a single illegal should be deported. And crime, after all, I mean, who cares about that? According to him, violence and violent crime are social constructs. He said that on the campaign trail, so this really should not be all that surprising. Does he actually even believe in borders at all? Likely, if you asked him seriously, probably not. But that said, okay, take a listen now to how local ABC News attempts to frame the story, because they're going to, try to make it seem like, oh, some legal immigrant who is doing nothing wrong got deported. But actually, in kind of telling the details of this case, they accidentally do have to sort of reveal the truth, and we'll explain that. So take a listen.
This morning, Mayor Mamdani and some members of New York City Council are calling for the release of a City Council employee who is now in ICE custody. The employee is a data analyst for the council and is reportedly a Venezuelan national. Eyewitness News reporter Jaysha Patel joins us live in the West Village, right outside the detention center where that employee is being held right now. Good morning, Jaysha.
Charlene, Pedro, good morning. Well, at this time, we do have limited information about this employee, but what we do know, like you mentioned, is that he's a data analyst for the city council who happens to be Venezuelan. The city council is not releasing his name because of privacy concerns, but what we do know at this point is city council speaker Julie Menon says the employee was detained after showing up for a routine immigration appointment in Bethpage. Menon says he had legal authorization to stay in the U.S. until this coming October, and that the feds gave her no indication that he had done anything illegal.
Yeah, you did at least one thing illegal. You overstayed the tourist visa. Now, as for the assault case, the arrest, I don't know what happened there. Probably shouldn't be getting into run-ins with the law if you're an illegal alien in the country to begin with. But there's your answer. Now, I do want you to notice how this is framed by the fake news, because they do this all the time, by the way. The words there are what? He had legal authorization to be in the United States until October. So what they're hoping by being intentionally vague is to say that, hey, maybe people will be under the perception that this is, say, a green card holder or someone here on a visa, and oh no, they're deporting the legal immigrants, but that's actually not true. That phrasing is very specific. It does indeed sound like she's referring to what we call, you may have heard of, right? Temporary protective status, which is not a visa. It does not make you a legal immigrant or even legally classified as an immigrant in the United States. It is simply basically a temporary amnesty status that's given to an illegal alien who is currently in a deportation proceeding, right, for likely illegally entering the country. But the reason that's given out is typically so that way, whatever pending immigration case is going on, whether that's something to do with an asylum case or a removal case, but we're trying to get that processed, that's usually when you receive TPS. It is conditional. It does not last forever. Yes, it can be revoked at any time. Trump, by the way, just did that for the Somalis living in Minnesota. And typically, right, it's not something that's just given out like hotcakes, although, as you may have just seen, the Biden administration did that on a pretty wide-scale level, which is probably why some, almost 9 years later now, he is still in the United States on this TPS status, despite the fact that, of course, even in Venezuela, there might be reason to believe it's time for him maybe to go home. But I just want to clear that up, right? So saying he has legal authorization or quote unquote legal status is not what you think it is, right? It doesn't mean they have a visa and they just took it away from him. No, he was here illegally. There's basically a government thing saying, okay, for right now, we won't deport you. But now we're saying, okay, we can deport you because overall you were here as an illegal. You might have had some bogus asylum claim or whatever. But guess what? It's the government's choice whether or not to recognize it. And they revoked it. And that's what happened here. Right. So just keep that in mind.
What is temporary protected status, abbreviated TPS? Well, first of all, it involves eligible foreign nationals from designated countries gaining a temporary immigration status here to the United States. This is based on the fact that their country has experienced something of the nature of an ongoing war, an earthquake, a flood, a drought that basically makes it very difficult for people to return to their homeland. It's important to understand that this is a temporary status. It does not lead to permanent resident status and never will. It's more of the nature of 6 to 18 months temporary status. If you have a question about it, you can go to the website of www.uscis.gov.
And as for his work authorization, by the way, that's something, yes, that's usually given out while you're temporarily on TPS. It doesn't make you suddenly a legal immigrant. Okay, so let's just be clear about that.
We reached out to ICE about the detainment, and we were told the employee had no legal right to be in the U.S. and that he has a prior arrest for assault and entered the U.S. on a tourist visa back in 2017.
That's correct. TPS does not give you a quote-unquote legal right to stay in the United States, okay? It's a conditional decision, again, by the government to basically say, for now, we won't move forward with completing your deportation proceedings. It doesn't give you a right to be here. It doesn't suddenly make you a legal immigrant. And all these semantic games that Democrats are playing, it's very important for us to point this out, okay? Because it's the same garbage they did with the Biden administration. I don't know if you remember that, but all of the illegal aliens coming to the border were being given TPS by the Biden administration. So technically, according to them, they could try, and by the way, did try to make the argument that these people are quote unquote legal immigrants, but they're not. Just keep that in mind.
And just to clarify for our viewers, Springfield, Ohio does have a large number of Haitian migrants who have legal status, temporary protected status.
Well, Margaret, but
thank you, Senator. We have so much to get to.
Margaret, I think it's important because
we're going to turn out of the economy. Thank you,
Margaret. The rules were that you guys weren't going to fact check, and since you're fact checking me, I think it's important to say what's actually going on. So there's an application called the CBP One app, where you can go on as an illegal migrant, apply for asylum or apply for parole, and be granted legal status at the wave of a Kamala Harris open border wand. That is not a person coming in, applying for a green card and waiting for 10 years. That is the facilitation of illegal immigration, Margaret, by our own leadership.
Thank you, Senator, for describing the legal process. We have so much to get to, Senator.
Those laws have been on the books since 1990.
Thank you, gentlemen.
The CBP One app has not been on the books since 1990. It's something that Kamala Harris created, Margaret.
Gentlemen, the audience can't hear you because your mics are cut.
Just want to point this out too, right? According to the U.S. State Department, the only people who are actually classified as immigrants, okay, this is very important, are green card holders and obviously naturalized citizens, because the legal definition of an immigrant is someone who permanently moves to another country, right? So this is very important. If you are here on, say, TPS status, you are not an immigrant, right? You are considered an alien, right, to the United States. And in case you can be a legal alien, illegal alien, but there you go, right? And the same is even true of someone who's on, say, a student visa, a H-1B work visa. All of these people who are commonly referred to as immigrants to America are actually not. Refugees, by the way, are legally not classified as immigrants because the entire purpose of their current status over here is to be temporary, okay? So that's another obviously semantic thing they try to do. Oh, they're not illegal aliens, they're undocumented immigrants. No, actually, they're not even immigrants because they don't belong here, and the plan is never to keep them to stay here. Just going to point that out.
Demanding ICE release him, and local and state officials are also speaking up.
I'm sorry we have to be here for what is becoming an all too routine situation, which is that a law-abiding immigrant with work authorization who is allowed to be here does the right thing and goes to their required check-in at a nice facility, and instead of getting rewarded for doing the right thing and following the right way, he is arrested and detained. and likely on a path to removal unless it can be stopped.
Okay, wait, hold on. What? A law-abiding immigrant who was doing the right thing and following the law. Did you not just hear? He broke the law to stay here beyond his tourist visa. He was not law-abiding, okay? Just because he was trying to manipulate the U.S. government to get legal status doesn't change the fact that he broke the law. And no, again, I repeat, he did not have any right to be here. The government was basically saying, right now, we're being nice to you and not going to deport you. But it never meant, hey, here's your permanent residence in the United States of America. That's not true. As it pertains to work authorization, again, I say that is very common for the government to give out while you're on TPS. It does not suddenly make you a legal immigrant, okay? Again, it's basically saying, oh, you're doing an asylum case right now, you're in an immigration case, even a deportation case. Well, you need to have money, you might as well work for now. It's not some anchor permanently to stay in the United States, or at least that's not how it was designed. Of course, we know that this is entirely what Democrats want to do, and, you know, they're just extremely pro-illegal immigration, as you can tell, but that is completely bogus, okay? Completely bogus.
Now, Mayor Mamdani released a statement saying he's outraged and says, quote, "This is an assault on our democracy, on our city, and our values. I'm calling for his immediate release and will continue to monitor the situation." Back out here live, looking ahead at what's happening later today. We do know that a rally is scheduled to happen right here outside of the detention center at noon today, demanding that this city council employee is released. Live in the West.
They're going to hold a rally for him. They're going to hold a rally for the illegal alien. Hey, I have a bright idea here. Do you know how this whole situation could have been avoided? It's actually quite simple. It's called, you should have never hired an illegal alien in the first place. Frankly, I would even argue a legal alien or immigrant still doesn't make a whole lot of sense. After all, I mean, maybe this is a hot take, I guess. I don't know. But frankly, I would argue that if you're working in any form of U.S. government, you should be required to be a U.S. citizen to work, like in like official government capacity, especially something like, say, the city council, city hall, Congress, the White House. You know, it's just pretty straight up. And again, I say I don't think it was exactly very secure to be hiring a Venezuelan national to be going over people's data. But, you know, that's just me. But even then, okay, so what is the argument here? You know, are you really going to make the case with a data analyst for the city government that, well, you know, we just needed the illegal because he's working the jobs Americans will refuse to do or don't know how to do, right? It's no different than picking grapes. Oh, really? You mean to tell me that there's not a single American in New York freaking city of all places who's saying, hey, I would love to work as a data analyst for the city government, right? There's not a bunch of computer science graduates right now who can't find jobs because the market is entirely overrun by foreigners who would very much like to be able to work that or work there as a data analyst. Get out of here with that crap. Obviously, that's completely bogus. And look, here's the thing. I don't know if that's all there is to the story. Could have been that they just hired an illegal, or it could be part of a deeper pattern of political corruption. But I would just like to point out, since we've been obviously discussing Minnesota and a lot of the corruption over there, that as it pertains particularly to New York City and the history of Democrat politics in that place, I made this reference before, right? Does ring very similar to Tammany Hall and the corrupt political machines that, again, Democrats back in the 1900s were operating. Research those more for yourself if you are at all curious, but this is actually a common tactic they used to use, right? The immigrants who just got off the boat at Ellis Island, the corrupt local Democrat politicians and political machines would basically do all this thing where they trade them money, they trade them cash, and sometimes public jobs too, by the way, and favors and all those things for votes. And so I really have to question, is that the same thing going on here? Is that why New York City apparently clearly here appears to have a 100+ year long tradition of hiring foreigners and immigrants and illegals to work jobs that seem like they should be likely reserved for American citizens? Again, they're jobs within the government. I'm not sure how many countries outside the West where that would be okay, you know? You think you could go to China as a non-Chinese citizen and try to be a civil servant? I don't think that would go over so well. But anyways, all of this in mind, right? You're hearing that rhetoric from Mamdani. I think we're beginning to perhaps understand why earlier this week, other progressive Democrats sharing his politics politics in the House, tried to make a call to defund ICE altogether. Because again, going back to what we spoke about earlier, this is what Democrats do. They're defending the indefensible, and yes, quite literally, they think this illegal alien, who also got arrested for assault, by the way, should be working in city government, and the child predators should still be out in the streets, and every single case, right, the ICE agents are always the bad guys, the illegals are always the good guys. Take a listen to what they're now pushing for.
As the Deputy Chair of the Progressive Caucus, I am grateful to have our members united to ensure the Department of Homeland Security faces accountability. Last week, the nation watched an ICE agent shoot a Minnesota resident in broad daylight. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. I am beyond heartbroken and outraged that the Trump administration's actions led to Renee Nicole Good's murder. Her final words before being shot were calm and non-threatening. She said, "That's fine, dude. I'm not mad at you." Those are the words of someone attempting to de-escalate, not someone posing a lethal threat.
Okay, well, she proceeded to drive a car right into him. But again, as I said, as you're hearing from Mamdani, as you're hearing from Omar, these people are actually of the stance, right? There is zero good work that ICE ever does. They support these illegal criminals staying in the country because, after all, borders don't exist in their true worldview. You know, countries don't exist unless they're non-white, non-Western countries, right? People should have a right to be wherever they want. And that is, of course, why, even if you're a foreigner who comes into the country and commits terrorism, commits a bunch of crimes, what do these people do? They call for leniency. They call for a laxing of immigration law, even as they see everything going on around them. And that is the story. And that, frankly, kind of sums up a lot as to why Democrats actually think it's a good thing and are trying to paint themselves as the good guys and lying about it, too, by the way. In this story over New York City, yes, hiring an illegal alien to work for them that should have never been in the country, should have not been allowed to stay in the country, and of course, commonsensically, right, should not have been working in city government. But anyways, that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.